In late 1918, a new state emerged in Central Europe with a diverse population and economy, but also unstable borders as fighting continued even after the armistice. The subsequent peace treaties increased its territory, a representative democracy was then established, which provided relative stability and rapid development. However, this could only mask underlying issues, which caused more and more problems in the 1930s. In this video, we'll take a look at the first Czechoslovak Republic, which existed for 2 decades until it was carved up by its neighbors. When the new state was proclaimed in October 1918, elections were impossible, so the National Assembly assumed authority, electing Tomáš Masaryk as its head. Upper Hungary was quickly invaded by Czech and Slovak troops, but the military had to be reorganized, while the Czechoslovak Legion was still in Siberia fighting against the Reds. The latter force had to stay there until early 1920, when it was finally evacuated from Vladivostok and arrived in Europe through America. In the meantime, the Sudetenland, with its important mines and German population, was occupied, a small area was taken from Poland, the new state was recognized by the Entente, and its borders were finalized in the Treaty of Trianon, establishing a link with Romania, an important ally. Elections were held in April 1920, which the government party won, but 11% went for the German political organization. A coalition of 5 Czechoslovak parties maintained stability, while Masaryk held the country together, being re-elected in 1925 and 1929. His close associate, Edvard Beneš, became foreign minister and remained in his position until 1935, when Masaryk resigned due to poor health. Together, they had to maintain the country's independence and also provide solutions to its own population. In 1928, 4 regions were created: Bohemia, Moravia-Silesia, Slovakia, and Carpathian Ruthenia. 3 regional assemblies were provided with limited jurisdictions, while ethnic minorities were granted freedom to use their language as long as they reached 20% in their respective districts. German parties participated in the government, while Hungarians stayed out, remaining cautious. The 1920 constitution established a bicameral parliament and universal suffrage. It was hard to secure a majority, so the government was sometimes weak. Although this was not intended, prime ministers were also relatively weak, while the president was much stronger with his 7-year term and his right to veto bills and accept international treaties. In the 1925 election, the Communist Party became the second largest, while Andrej Hlinka's Slovak People's Party emerged as a major force in Slovakia. Western orientation was emphasized, relying heavily on the League of Nations and its guarantees, which worked in the 1920s. An alliance with Romania and Yugoslavia, the Little Entente, prevented any Hungarian resurgence and Habsburg restoration, although this further alienated the Hungarian minority and ensured Hungary's hostility. On the economic front, the situation was much better. The country inherited more than 70% of Austria-Hungary's industry, including the Škoda works of Pilsen, which had been one of the largest arms manufacturers in the former empire. It also produced locomotives, automobiles, and machinery, but the chemical, glass, and porcelain industries should also be mentioned, along with the country's breweries. No wonder that in the interwar period, Czechoslovakia was one of the world's 10 most industrialized nations. On the other hand, Slovakia was less developed. 60% of its population worked in agriculture and forestry, with only 17% working in industry. And only 5% of all industry was owned by Slovaks, while in the Czech half of the country, 39% worked in industry, and most of it was owned by Germans. In agriculture, large, mostly German and Hungarian landowners were pushed out, along with the Roman Catholic Church. Large estates were expropriated and gradually redistributed. Ethnic diversity remained a major problem, especially as the central government and other national institutions were dominated by Czechs. The constitution recognized the Czechoslovak nation as the creator and principal constituent of the state, while Czech and Slovak became the official language. This was needed partly because in the newly established country, there were more Germans than Slovaks, not to mention the significant Hungarian and Ruthenian minority, whose loyalty was questionable to say the least. Like everywhere else, the Great Depression intensified internal problems and division. In 1933, when Adolf Hitler gained power in Germany, fear of German aggression grew, partly because Czechoslovakia remained the only parliamentary democracy in the region. It was now surrounded by authoritarian or totalitarian states. Instead of seeking the creation of a Central European alliance, Foreign Minister Beneš stuck to his Western orientation, relying on French promises. However, as early as 1925, the Locarno Pact disregarded Eastern European issues and simply guaranteed Germany's western borders, which also made it more difficult for France to provide assistance to its allies. The 1935 parliamentary election brought surprising results. The Sudeten German Party, SDP, became the largest in parliament with 15% of the votes. The Sudeten Germans demanded autonomy, but they were financed mainly by Nazi Germany, and it was clear that this would only be the first step. The number of incidents exploded. Konrad Heinlein's organization committed several terrorist acts. In the same year, the Soviet Union signed treaties with both France and Czechoslovakia, promising that it would help Czechoslovakia in case of a foreign invasion, but only after France acted first. It was also unclear how Soviet troops could reach the country, as neither Poland nor Romania would allow their passage, so the alliance was simply a list of vague promises. After Masaryk's resignation, Beneš was elected president, but he found himself in an increasingly difficult situation with Germany's resurgence and Western appeasement, which disregarded Czechoslovakia's interests. In 1936, when the Rhineland was occupied by German troops, France and Britain remained passive. This was not a good sign. A year later, in 1937, Hitler revealed to his top aides that he intended to annex both Austria and Bohemia, which would be followed by the eventual elimination of the Czech nation. The occupation of Austria took place in March 1938. The West once again remained silent, while Hungary was rearming, and there was increasing demand in Slovakia for greater autonomy. Czechoslovakia became the next target. Hitler encouraged Heinlein to increase his demands, but to avoid war, the Munich Agreement was signed in September by Germany, Italy, France, and Britain. It gave the Sudetenland and its border fortifications to the Germans, who then forcibly expelled the local Czech population. Czechoslovakia was thus abandoned by its allies. President Beneš resigned and fled to London in October. He was succeeded by Emil Hácha, who became president of the Second Republic and turned it into an authoritarian state. In November, the First Vienna Award gave southern Slovakia back to Hungary, while Poland acquired Teschen, sending its troops there. In Slovakia, an autonomous government was established under Josef Tiso, but the country itself had mere months left. In March 1939, Hitler twisted Hácha's arms, and the Czech lands were occupied by German troops, while Hungary took Ruthenia to recover another region and to establish a common border with Poland. The Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia was declared. Hácha remained its president, at least on paper. Slovakia became a puppet state with Tiso as its head, who remained loyal to the German cause until the end of the war. I will talk more about this topic in other videos. This concludes my summary of the interwar period. Thank you for watching. See you next time.